SeaWorld San Diego is the most underrated park in the SeaWorld chain. Located in, as you'd guess by the name, San Diego, California, this park originally opened just as an Oceanarium, but has recently expanded its ride lineup, particularly in the thrill ride department, to become a true amusement park, but it also has the zoo roots there as well. In this video, I'll review SeaWorld San Diego, and I'll discuss why I think you should visit this park. This is actually the original SeaWorld park. The park originally opened in 1964 after being founded by 4 graduates of UCLA, and a theme park wasn't actually their original intention. Their original plan was to open an underwater restaurant, but this was not deemed feasible at the time, so they instead created a 22-acre marine park. And if they had built that restaurant, it is unlikely that we would have gotten both the SeaWorld San Diego we know today, or the other SeaWorld parks. The park originally opened with no rides, just animal exhibits and shows. But the park was wildly successful. Not only did this lead to the expansion of the San Diego property, but it also led to 3 additional SeaWorld parks opening, one in Aurora, Ohio in 1970, one in Orlando, Florida in 1973, and one in San Antonio, Texas in 1988. And boy has the San Diego location expanded in many ways. First, in terms of land, the park's size has increased over 8-fold. The marine park was just 22 acres in size when it opened in 1964, but today it is 189 acres in size, making it a very large park. Second, the park started adding rides over time. In the late 1960s, the park added 2 observation rides in the Bayside Sky Ride and the Sky Tower. This was to capitalize on the park's gorgeous location on Mission Bay. But the ride boom has really occurred over the past 2 decades, with the park specifically focusing on thrill rides and roller coasters as of late, including roller coasters in 3 straight seasons with Electric Eel, a premier ride Skyrocket 2 in 2018, Tidal Twister, a Skyline attraction Skywarp in 2019, and Emperor, a B&M dive machine in 2020 or 2021 whenever the park is allowed to reopen from the COVID-19 shutdown. And the decision to focus more on rides is an approach that the other 2 remaining SeaWorld parks in Orlando and San Antonio are also using to increase attendance and slowly phase out the animal shows that they received criticism for in the Blackfish documentary. However, adding rides at the San Diego park is significantly more challenging than the other SeaWorld parks for 2 reasons. First, the city rules require at least 75% of SeaWorld's attractions to include significant animal education or conservation-related elements. Significant is discretionary, but the town defined the educational element if it could function as a separate exhibit alone, independent of the ride or attraction it is included with. This is why rides such as Manta have an aquarium built around the ride. Second, the park has a very strict height restriction due to its location on the bay and the town wanting to minimize the park's visual impact. Most of the park's attractions must be under 30 feet or 9 meters in height. The park can go above 30 feet, but they cannot do it often. No more than 25% of the theme park area can be above 30 feet in height. And of that 25%, much of it needs to be below the 60-foot or 18-meter threshold to remain below the park's tree line on the west side of the property. Only 10% of the theme park area is allowed to exceed 60 feet in height. And when the park does exceed 60 feet in height, the ride structure must blend in with the sky. That is why you see rides like Electric Eel and Emperor having light blue color schemes to blend in with the sky. Because of these restrictions, SeaWorld San Diego is probably the weakest of the 3 SeaWorld parks in terms of rides and attractions. But their lineup is still decent all things considered. Manta is a wonderful mock multi-launch coaster. Despite the ride's maximum height of just 30 feet, the ride's layout is masterful. It has 2 solid launches to build up speed, the ride dives underground at points, and the course is filled with airtime hills, some of which in the second half are fairly aggressive if you're riding in the back car. I have a more in-depth review on Manta if you're interested, but this coaster is extremely re-rideable and it's my favorite ride in the park by far. Electric Eel is the park's best thrill coaster. The ride may be short, but it packs a punch. You have multiple launches and you come out of your seat a few times. You get ejector airtime going up and down the tower, but in between that, you get some major sustained hang time 150 feet above the ground on that inline twist. This is another coaster I have a separate review on Journey to Atlantis is a good choice on a hot day. This water coaster has a solid first drop and a few coaster elements towards the end, but it is a bit barren in terms of theming and landscaping despite that fancy looking facade. This is another ride that I have a separate review on if you're interested. I have yet to ride the park's two newest coasters. Tidal Twister was closed for refurbishment in my most recent visit, and unfortunately I have heard that ride is rather rough, which isn't too surprising considering my less than stellar experiences on Harley Quinn Crazy Coaster at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Meanwhile, Emperor has been seen testing, but it didn't open before the pandemic shutdown. This looks like a nice dive coaster that should have the best single drop in the park, and also be the best ride in the park for inversions. The park's non-coaster lineup is on the weaker side though. The park barely has any flat rides, which is a feature shared by all the SeaWorld parks. The park does have an awesome River Rapids ride though, in Shipwreck Rapids. The ride has some powerful rapids and several auxiliary effects that if you ride on a hot day will get you soaked. And this ride also has a single rider line, which will get you on almost instantly if you don't mind riding separate from the rest of your group. There are also two kids areas for younger kids in Sesame Street Bay of Play and Ocean Explorer. Last but not least, you have the two observation rides I previously mentioned that give incredible views of the coastline and the park itself. Although these attractions are additional upcharges unless you're a season pass holder. Since SeaWorld San Diego operates year-round, definitely check the park's refurbishment schedule before visiting. At least one ride has been closed in each of my visits. That is particularly true if you visit during the quieter months like January or February. I often visit during this time, and at least one coaster has been closed in each visit. And in one of my visits, Manta was added to the refurbishment schedule with just a week's notice, which was a major bummer. Rides will also have reduced operating hours in the off-season. Unfortunately, I missed Shipwreck Rapids in my most recent visit because I didn't realize it closed by the early afternoon. So also keep that in mind, but on the bright side, the off-season will have barely any crowds. And to be honest, I've never really had an issue with crowds at this park even on a busier day. I've visited on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and even a Saturday in July, but the longest line I ever encountered was just 30 minutes for one of the coasters. More or less, people are more interested in the shows and animal exhibits. Operations are pretty fast at this park. Electric Eel is hamstrung by the fact it can only run one train though, but Manta and Journey to Atlantis usually have multiple trains going. And if lines do become an issue, the park has quick queue skip the line systems for a reasonable rate compared to other parks. And almost every ride at this park looks incredible. They almost always have fresh coats of paint, and like all the SeaWorld parks, the presentation of each attraction is top notch. Whether it be an animal exhibit, landscaping, or even both. The aesthetic translates to the park in general. This is the prettiest of the SeaWorld parks, easily. While it doesn't have a lake in the center of the park like the other two, this park has the best landscaping, and you still get that water feature with Mission Bay on the park's perimeter. The real advantage of SeaWorld San Diego over the other theme parks are the animal attractions. This actually allowed the park to operate as a zoo with no rides in late 2020, while California's amusement parks were forced to remain closed due to the pandemic. And these animal attractions come in three different forms: exhibits, shows, and tours. You have all sorts of animal exhibits scattered throughout the park. You have a mix of interactive exhibits like the cleaner fish by the entrance, or the manta petting area. And you have a mix of indoor and outdoor exhibits as well. If there's a sea animal you love, SeaWorld probably has it. My favorite exhibits are the dolphins, the sea lions, the penguins, and the sharks, but they're all done very well. You also have a wide variety of shows. The focal point has always been the orca shows, but SeaWorld is phasing out their traditional trick-based shows in favor of an educational approach for these animals, but you still get to see the whales at these shows. But the two shows I personally prefer are Dolphin Days and Sea Lion High, the latter of which has a good amount of comedy for an animal show. One last note about the shows: if you want to get soaked, sit up front. Most of the shows, including the ones with the dry animals, will include a splash from either the animals or a water cannon. And then you have the animal tours. While I have not done the tours at the San Diego park, I have done them at the Orlando location, and they are not only educational, but you get to go extremely close to some amazing animals. If you have a favorite animal and SeaWorld offers a tour for that animal, I would strongly recommend looking into the tour, even if it is a bit pricey. The last thing I want to touch on about SeaWorld San Diego is the food. This is not a strength of the park, unfortunately. In my visits, food lines have been long and the food is not that good. It is overpriced and not particularly good, which is a shame because the other parks in the chain have fantastic food like SeaWorld Orlando and the Busch Gardens parks. Southern California is a popular destination for roller coaster enthusiasts. You have the park with the most roller coasters in Six Flags Magic Mountain. You have one of the best theme parks in the world in Disneyland. You have one of the best Cedar Fair parks in Knott's Berry Farm. And you have a Universal Park with an hour-long tram tour through movie sets. But you also have SeaWorld San Diego, and I feel like the park's recent additions have gained it more attention in the roller coaster community. Electric Eel and Emperor are strong additions for the park, but the reasons to visit this park are unchanged. You visit for the animals, the park's overall appearance, and Manta. If you only care about coasters, you probably only need a half day at this park, and then you can hit Belmont Park for the historic Giant Dipper just down the road in the same trip. But if you love animals, SeaWorld San Diego is definitely a full-day park with the sheer amount of exhibits and shows. Compared to the other SeaWorld parks, this one is behind the Orlando location in my opinion, but I will take it over the Texas one for the superior atmosphere. And I think it's a borderline top 5 park in California, which is no small feat. So those are my thoughts on SeaWorld San Diego, the large marine life park in Southern California. Have you been to this park? What are your thoughts about SeaWorld San Diego? I would love to hear what you think down below. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.